Welcome back to my channel. My name is Lynn, and in today's video we are working on quilt block number 15 of my 9-patch sampler quilt along. And for today's block we are going to make the card trick block. Now for this quilt block you are going to need your background fabric as well as 4 fabrics for your main fabric. Okay, now once you have all your fabrics, I have already pressed my fabric with a hot steamy iron, and I'm hoping that you have done the same. If so, we can begin working on this quilt block. So let's get started. Alright guys, now from your background fabric you need to cut 3 squares that measure 5.5 by 5.5 inches. Okay, then from your main fabric, from each main fabric you're going to cut 1 square that measures 5.5 by 5.5 inches, and you're also going to cut 1 square that measures 4 inches. Okay, now the cutting instructions that I just gave you give you some leeway, some extra room, just in case you make a mistake. So if you're a beginner and you can't quite sew a 1/4 inch seam allowance, or your cuts aren't 100% straight, this gives you a little leave room, so that way your blocks you can still square up your blocks to measure 4.5 inches. Now if you are an advanced sewer and you don't have a problem with 1/4 inch seam allowances or with squaring up blocks or things like that, I will leave the cutting instructions for you down in the description box, and it will be under the title Advanced Sewer. So if you're a beginner, follow the instructions I'm giving you in the video as far as cutting. If you're more advanced, your cutting instructions are down below in the description box. Once you have all of your pieces cut out, the first thing that we're going to do is, with our 4-inch squares from our main fabric, you're going to cut these 4-inch squares in half diagonally. And you're going to repeat the same process with your 5.5-inch squares from your main fabric. You're going to cut these in half diagonally. And then from your background fabric, you're going to take 2 of your 5.5-inch squares and cut them in half diagonally as well. And then for your last 5.5-inch square from your background fabric, you're going to cut that diagonally twice, so it'll look like a giant X. So once you have made your cuts, I'm just going to slide these up but keep this shape. You should have your background fabric as well as your main fabric. The 5.5-inch square should be cut in half diagonally. What you're going to do is just set one stack aside from your main fabric, and you're going to set one set aside from your background fabric. Then you're going to take your main fabric as well as your background fabric. You're going to lay them with the right sides together. Make sure you line up your edges. Now be careful on this point because you are working with the bias of your triangle. So you're going to pin it into place along the bias end as much as you need, and then you're going to sew 1/4 inch away from the edge, and you're going to do that for all 4 pieces. Okay, so you should have 4 blocks that are half square triangles. And the next thing you just need to do is to square up all of your blocks into 4.5 inches. Once you have squared up your blocks to 4.5 inches, you're going to take your 4-inch squares that you cut in half, and you're going to take one of those stacks. Now with the points, you're going to line up your points. Now at this point, you can rearrange how you want the colors to be. But just make sure that your points line up. Okay, I will do mine like this. So you arrange your colors how you would like them to be. Let me turn it this way so it's straight. And what you're going to do is you're going to sew these 2 blocks together, sew these 2 together, and then sew this whole unit together as one. Now don't mix up which side you're supposed to sew on. So just put your fabric right sides together, and using your pen, face the point of your pen on the side where you're going to sew. So you're going to sew on this side where the point is, okay? Once you've done that, you're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance from the edge of your fabric. Do that for both blocks. Okay, so you've sewn your 2 triangles together on both sides. Make sure you press opposite sides. So on this one, I press my seam to the left or to the red, and on this block, I press my seam towards the right, to the yellow. Next, you're just going to fold these over right sides together, bump up your seams, pin or clip into place as you need to, and you're going to sew a 1/4 inch down this side of your triangle. Once you are done with your block, you are going to just square this block up to measure 4.5 by 4.5 inches. Alright, our center block is done. I'm going to set that to the side. Okay, the next thing you want to do is to take your 5.5 inch square from your background fabric that is cut in diagonal in both directions, and you want to make sure that the points are facing down for all of those triangles. So just turn them so that the points are facing down. And then you're going to take the other stack of your 5.5 inch square that you cut diagonally from your main fabric, and you're going to take the point of each one of these and match it up with the point from your background fabric. So you're going to line that up. So once you have done that, you're going to do the same thing again. You're going to line them up right sides together. Make sure your edges are lined up. And so that you don't get mixed up, make sure that you take your pen and put the point in the direction on the side that you need to sew. So I'm going to sew on that end. Once you've done that for all 4 pieces, you're going to sew along that edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, now the next thing that we're going to do is to join up our, this would be a quarter square if it was 4 sewn together. So you're going to take this two-tone half square and you're going to pair it up with one of your half squares from your main fabric. But I'm going to show you which ones to pair it up with so you don't get confused, okay? So you're going to orient your center block in the direction that you want your colors. So for me, I want my red to be at the top. So starting from the top, you're going to work your way around to the left. And what you're going to do is whatever color is at the top, which for me is my red square, you're going to take that half square and pair it up with the color on your left. On my left, I have blue. So I'm going to take my blue half square and I'm going to pair it up with my red. So my red, I'm going to pair it up with the blue. Okay, let me set this aside. And then I'm going to take my half blue square and I'm going to pair it up with my half yellow. So that'll be like these two go together. And I'm going to take my half yellow square and pair it up with my pink. So here's my pink. And I'm going to pair it up with my half yellow. Like this. And then I'm going to take my half pink and square it up with my red. So here's my half and half pink. And I'm going to square this up with my red. Okay? So that's what you want to do for all 4 of these. So what you can do is just take your half color, fold it in half, just press it, make a little indentation with your finger so you'll know where the middle is, and you're going to match that up, pin it or clip as you need it to, and you're going to sew 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the fabric. Again, remember to face your pin in the direction that you want to sew your line on. Okay? Alright, when you have sewn your block together, you're going to press towards the solid dark side of your fabric. So press your seams towards the solid side of the fabric, and then we're going to square these blocks up to 4.5 inches. Okay, so once you squared up all of your pieces, it is now time to put this quilt block together. Alright, so this is the layout for your block. Pause it right here if you need to make sure that you get your layout correctly. So once we've laid out our pieces, we're just going to start sewing our rows and then put the whole block together. So you're going to take the first 2 pieces from your top row, lay them with the right sides together. You're going to pin or clip into place as needed, and you're going to sew down the side with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once you're done, you're going to attach the last piece from that row, lining up your edges, and then sew down the side with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you're going to press all of your seams to the center. So once you have finished sewing together row 1, you're going to repeat the same process for rows 2 and row 3. With row 2, you're going to press your seams outward, and then in row 3, you're going to press your seams in towards the center block. Okay guys, we're in the home stretch and we're almost done. So next thing we need to do is just take our top row, flip it over onto the second. You're going to line up your seams. They should nest together, and your edges. Pin into place as needed, and then sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once you're done, you're going to do the same for the bottom row. Flip it over onto the second, nest up your seams, line up your edges, pin or clip into place, and sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright guys, we are finished. Quilt block number 15 is done. The last thing you need to do is to square up your quilt block to measure 12.5 by 12.5 inches. Don't forget to post a picture of your finished block on my Instagram at JLynCarmen using the hashtag 9patchsamplerquilt. Until next time, happy quilting!